Hey everyone, this is Brad Phillips, and I wanted to give a quick overview of the undergraduate handbook for student nurses at WVU. There's been a few different changes over the past year to year and a half, and so I want to make sure I can highlight those and provide any clarity, and maybe these will answer some questions that you might have had in the past few semesters. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is how students get to us. I think we do a really great job with, you know, understanding how they progress through the program, but I want to just provide some information about how students get here. So incoming freshman students can be admitted to one of two pathways, either a direct admit pathway or a pre-nursing pathway. So for direct admit students, those students that meet those criteria must achieve a C minus or higher in all of their freshman courses, their prerequisite courses. And by the first semester, end of fall, they must have a 3.0 GPA. And then by the end of spring, the second semester, they must have a 3.5 GPA. Pre-nursing students must again achieve a C minus or higher in all those prerequisite freshman courses and must have a 3.0 GPA by the end of the first year. So the difference here is that direct admit must have a 3.5 by the end of the first year, and pre-nursing have 3.0. Direct admit students are guaranteed a seat for the fall of sophomore year as long as they keep their seat by fulfilling the requirements above. But pre-nursing students must actually apply for a seat during the application window. And then in the fall, we take 96 students. The first seats go to direct admit students, and then we backfill in with the top pre-nursing students. And in the spring, we take 72 seats. And those are all pre-nursing students, or if direct admit may have deferred to spring for some reason. And students are simply ranked and selected based on overall and prerequisite GPA. I always tell students and families, there's no essays, there's no personal statements, there's no interviews. We rank just simply on GPA. And then, of course, for the fast track ABSN programs, we take 24 seats in the spring, both in Morgantown and in Bridgeport. So academic standards of progression. And so GPA, when students are actually in the program, so our traditional BSN students must maintain an overall 3.0 GPA while in the program, okay? If they fall below that GPA, they currently have one semester on probation, which we call academic notice, to bring that up. And if they cannot, they will be dismissed from the School of Nursing. For ABSN and LPN to BSN programs, we go by program GPA. So not overall, because they don't typically have, a lot of other types of prereq courses and they have some provisional admission differences and things like that. So we go by programs, the GPA that's in the program that they're in. So from the time of being admitted as a nursing student to graduation. And they must keep a 3.0 program GPA. And then for RN to BSN, we choose nursing GPA. So only nursing NSG courses, and they must maintain a 2.5 GPA in that program. All courses used for the degree must be completed with a C minus or higher. So that includes if the traditional nursing students need 122 credits to graduate, and a good chunk of those are prerequisite courses, any course in that graduation that are using to graduate to fulfill the degree, they must get a C minus or higher. If a student receives a D or F in more than 2 nursing courses, they are dismissed. So they can get a D or an F in 2 nursing courses while in the program, but the third D or F is dismissal. And students can only repeat a single nursing course one time. If they fail the second attempt, they will be dismissed. For example, if a student is taking, let's say, 212, and they fail 212, that's their first course failure, and they repeat it, and they fail 212 again, even though they only have 2 failures, they failed the same course twice. And so for that reason, they would be dismissed. Grading. So rounding the grades only occurs on final grade. So not individual assignments, not individual exams, not exam or assignment columns. And I have the rounding scale here below. And so the requirements to pass a course, any nursing course. So the student must achieve a 77% in the overall course, as well as in the individual columns. Okay. So if the student achieves an overall course average of 77%, but does not meet the average for exams, didactic column, clinical column, or does not pass the pass-fail portion of clinical, they get a D in the course regardless of their overall course average. So if they have a 85% in the course, but they got a 75% in the exam average, they get a D in the course. All right. So we should be having separate columns in our sole grading shell to reflect these graded columns. So we should have an exam column, a didactic assignment column, and a clinical assignment column. So we can see, right, what are the averages for these columns. And that can be done very easily in the sole grading feature. Midterm grade. So all undergraduate courses must have midterm grades entered. Just for course coordinators, the midterm grade should include at least 25 to 30% of the entire course grade. So if total course points are 500, the midterm grade should represent at least 125 to 150 points. All right, so make sure that there's enough assignments or exams at the front of the course so students are being graded on at least 25 to 30% of the content by midterm. When entering the midterm grade, enter what the student would receive if the course ended that day. So if a student has an A in the overall course, but their exam average is 75%, you would enter a D for their midterm grade. Extra credit, so there is no bonus points or extra credit to be added to exams, exam averages, ATI, or clinical assignments, right? You can have extra credit opportunities, but it must be part of the didactic assignment column in the course. So you can include alternate assignments or points, but that goes towards a didactic column. So it can't be added to exams, no bonus points on exams, no extra credit in exam columns. So just keep that in mind. ATI, so there's kind of two types of ATIs we use in our course or our program. The course level content mastery exams, in which students must achieve a level 2, that's the competency. And then our comprehensive predictor, which is in Nursing 486, the last semester of the program. And the goal is to receive a 92% passing likelihood of passing the NCLEX. The content mastery exams count as 10% of the course grade and are not in the exam average. They should be in their own column there. So the first attempt, you can see here, if students get a level 3, they get all 10% of the points. So it says 10 out of 10 here, but this really is, if it's worth 60 points, the ATI, because your course is 600 points, then they get the full 60 points. And then level 2, level 1 are scored as you see. The retest points are below. And so if they got a level 1 on the first attempt and they get a level 2 in the second attempt, then they would get 8 out of 10 points towards the ATI. So that's kind of how the scoring works for ATI. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. So testing best practices. This is not in the handbook, but it is in the undergraduate faculty soul site, just to offer guidance for best testing practices. These are evidence-based, and they've also been informed by the Academic Integrity Office as well. So, of course, we know that any types of phone or smart devices, smart watches should be placed in the front or back of the room, really in most students' backpacks. We prohibit blankets, throws, shawls, coats, or caps, other than being for cultural or religious reasons. Make sure we have, student IDs present at the exam. Some faculty have students show their IDs when they're signing in or signing out. and the ID usually is hooked onto the laptop as well, to be displayed during the exam period. Assign randomized seating if possible. I know classrooms are tight. This is often really not easy to do, but we should always try to have an empty seat between each student. Um, all exams should have some sort of academic integrity statement that students complete prior to entering their exam as a requirement. A lot of course coordinators already have these available, so if you would like to have one or need one, reach out and I'll point you in the right way as someone that has one for their exams. Lockdown browser is important to use, and then requiring privacy screens or filters. All of the students that had the laptop program, so in Morgantown, their computers will come with a privacy screen, and so you can have them require privacy screens in your classroom. The goal is to have two proctors, one in the front, one in the back of the classroom if possible. Randomized question sequences, only allowing one visible question at a time. Students can have scratch paper, but oftentimes it is collected at the end of the exam. Faculty to only answer technology-related questions, so not clarifying content or providing definitions. For online exams, students should be providing their ID and giving a view of the environment around them, and then ensuring that cameras remain on for the entire exam. And then finally, exam reviews are to be concept-based, and so the students don't have access to the actual exam questions. We're reviewing concepts, not individual exam items. Academic integrity and student conduct. School nursing has recently become hands-off to all of this, and so any academic dishonesty or student conduct concerns should be submitted by the observer to those respective offices. And we have those links on the undergraduate faculty Soul site, but feel free, if you have questions, reach out to myself or to Tina Keener, and we can point you in the right direction. Appeals and complaints. Students can appeal a final grade, academic penalty such as dismissal or probation, or an academic dishonesty charge. Final grade appeals go to me as level 1 and then go to the dean as level 2. Academic penalties are appealed by our CAPS committee, so academic standards committee, and then academic dishonesty charges are appealed through the academic integrity office under the direction of Paul Headings. Students can also submit formal complaints. This is a new-ish process through the What's on Your Mind survey, and these submissions are anonymous or they can identify themselves, and those go to me. And then I will disperse them in the places they need to be. So those are students' options for appeals and complaints. Clinical attendance. So if a student is absent and they want to request their absence from clinical be an excused absence, they have 48 hours to submit their request for excused absence to the BSN director, Tina Keener, via Qualtrics survey. That survey is on the undergraduate faculty Soul site and in the handbook. If the students do not submit a request within 48 hours, that absence will be unexcused. If a student is greater than 30 minutes late to clinical, they should be sent home and it will count as an unexcused absence. And then for tardy students that accrue more than 2 tardies greater than 10 minutes each will also receive an unexcused absence, and then subsequent tardies will also become unexcused absences. The first unexcused absence is written notice, and any subsequent unexcused absences will result in a 5% grade reduction in the clinical assignment column of the course where the absence occurred, not to exceed 10% in a given course. So if a student has their first absence in 312, and then their second absence occurs in 320, the 5% deduction will be in the clinical assignment column of 320, where the absence occurred. And so again, not to exceed a 10% deduction in a given course. Students are able to trade days with proper notice and instructor approval, but there are no makeup days. If students miss a clinical day, we should really be taking them out of their farm out days and putting them in the traditional clinical experiences for those days to make up those experiences as part of their normal schedule. Club sports had some issues recently about students trying to, that are taking part in club sports and getting absences, approvals, and things like that. So The only designated sports that are excused absences are NCAA sports. So if they are playing a sport as part of WVU athletics, their travel and their activities are excused absences. For intramural or club sports, these are through student organizations. Academics take precedence, and if there's a mandatory clinical and or classroom requirement, so clinical or exams, those are expectations, and that absence will be unexcused unless they've made accommodations with their instructor prior. But typically, these are unexcused, and students are not to be able to travel for intramural club sports or miss exams or clinical for this. So just keep that in mind that we really only excuse NCAA sports, and we don't really typically excuse or recognize intramural club sports as excused absences. Clinical compliance. So this is all of our pre-check, sentry things, vaccines, background checks, all that good stuff. And so the deadlines are here for each semester. So for spring, January 1, for summer, May 1st, and for fall, August 1st. So all students that are non-compliant on the first day of classes each semester only have until the add drop week to remedy documentation. And typically that's the first Friday of the first week of classes. If they're non-compliant by 4 p.m. on a Friday of the first week of classes, they are not permitted to attend direct patient care clinical experiences. So they can still attend simulation, skills lab. They can be in the sim center, but they cannot be in the inpatient hospital setting or in the community practice care setting. RN to BSN students that don't have typical traditional inpatient clinical experiences, but if they're non-compliant, they will be not permitted to submit clinical assignments in RN to BSN courses. So each RN to BSN course have designated clinical assignments, and they'll accrue a 5% grade reduction that matches a clinical assignment clinical absence policy as well. And then the students that are missing clinical in the BSN, ABSN, LPN, and BSN programs, each clinical day that they miss for noncompliance, they again accrue unexcused absences and then subsequent grade reduction. So keep that in mind. We're going to be making sure all students are compliant. And this is a requirement for the institutions, right? For the hospitals that students go into. They have to be compliant before they can enter. So we'll let you know if the student's not compliant. Dr. Keener will email you and give you a heads up of which students cannot attend clinical experiences, and then they will again accrue unexcused absences from there. Community service, there's been a slight change here. So we know in BSN programs, traditional programs, they have, excuse me, 100 hours of service. ABSN, LPN to BSN, 50 hours of service hours, and RN to BSN, 25 hours. The new change here is of total hours above, half must come from community service that is out in the community, so external to the organization. And then the other half should be fulfilled through internal focused service, such as in the STEP Center with the School of Nursing. They can also get service for donating items to communities in need, but those must be approved in advance and cannot exceed 10% of total hours of service. And so we'll be tracking now to make sure that half of their hours are outside and half are inside, just to give them a broad array of service opportunities and a diverse experience. And so, we encourage diversity of service, and then therefore 25 hours at any one site or activity is the maximum they can account for. So if they do 400 hours over the summer at a camp, typically only 25 of those hours will count. Because again, we want to encourage diversity of community service. And that's all I have. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, feel free to reach out via email. I'm wishing you all a fruitful semester. And again, that new handbook is published and available. You can find it on the Undergraduate Soul site, as well as on the the School of Nursing website, so feel free to review that. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to myself or Dr. Keener. And I hope you have a great rest of your summer.